I'm going to basically just tell a data story today, right? How can we actually use data in our communities to make real change? He said, my name is Erica. If you have any questions, feel free to just, we're a casual group today, right? We can ask questions, interact, converse. I'm comfortable with that, just in case you wanted to know. So I'm talking about data to action, right? How do you take data to information, to knowledge, to wisdom, and actually act on it? And my organization, Data Driven Detroit, is a regional data hub, a repository for data. So we were established about 7 years ago to be a repository of data and information about the region as a whole. And a lot of that comes from the fact that philanthropy, universities, nonprofit organizations, block groups, even individual residents want to understand whether they're having an impact in their community. And if they're not having an impact with whatever they're doing, how can they make sure that they have a deeper impact in the future? And in order to do that, you really need all of the data to be in one place. Otherwise, you spend months on end going out and knocking on every city department door and going to the federal websites and going to the state websites and then going and filing your FOIA. And 6 months later, you've got all your information together. Then you've got a mess on your hands because it's all in different formats, and you might need it, inside CSV, or you're going to run SPSS to actually deal with this. So what we do is actually create a space where all of these data can reside, and then we make them available to anyone who wants them. So our mission is to provide accessible, high-quality information and analysis to drive informed decision making. It's a lot and a little all in one sentence, right? So what does this actually mean? We really want to see data-driven decisions, community, policy, and data-driven innovation coming together, coming from all of the great minds that we have in our community. And it's not just myself and my band of urban planners and data scientists who have those abilities. Every single one of us has the ability to use the information that we generate as a community to make better decisions for ourselves.
So this is available to the public, not just to the policymakers.
That's correct.
It's out there right now.
Yep. And specifically at D3, over the course of 7 years, I was the second hire back in 2009, and we were started with incubation grants from two major foundations, the Skillman Foundation and the Kresge Foundation, big players in Southeast Michigan, right, and especially in Detroit. And when we started, it was really about creating that one place where all the data could reside. So we did a lot of data collection and management. And then we started working with community and realized, not everyone's super comfortable looking at spreadsheets. We love spreadsheets, right? I get tingles when I look at data in a table, but not everyone else looks at it the same way. So data visualization was really critical to us, and sort of telling the story of data out through pictures, and I'm sure you're all familiar with a lot of those. Data visualization, there's collection, visualization, give me that analysis so that we can actually crunch the numbers hand in hand with community, with philanthropy, with universities. And then really over the course of those, let's say, first 4 years, we got all the way to that point, and then we realized we really need to be working on making this more accessible overall. So we built a host of online tools to interact with and extract data, to make it available publicly on our website, and also to sort of push information out further. And our next step is really around interpretation, and again, walking hand in hand with people who have the questions, who have the issues, the challenges they want to address, and we go on a journey together with them to try to apply data to those questions and come up with solutions together. Now I'm ready. So in 2009, I mentioned we started in 2009. We also undertook one of the biggest projects that's ever happened around parcel data in the city of Detroit ever back in 2009. And that was the Detroit Residential Parcel Survey. There are over 350,000 residential parcels in Detroit, and nobody understood the condition of properties that were located on those parcels. They didn't even know if there was a property on the parcel. So we, working with several partners, were able to go out and survey all 350,000 and pull that data together. It took us a really long time to do it, as you might imagine. And then we were using those data for about 5 years, working with community groups, working with block clubs, creating neighborhood plans together, right? Here's your current conditions, now let's plan for future conditions of your neighborhood. It was a really essential data set for us because it was really fine-grained in comparison to census data, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and Michigan Department of Community Health. These are bigger areas, and so this was a really, really fine-grained data set that was an important asset to the conversations around data that we were having in Detroit. So we used those data for 5 years, like I said, and then in 2013, late 2013, moving on into 2014, this Detroit Blight Removal Task Force was established. And this was the White House kind of saying, oh yeah, Dan Gilbert, resident billionaire, you really care about blight? Go ahead and put your money where your mouth is, almost literally. Tell us how we should actually deal with blight in Detroit. Why don't you go ahead and create a plan and a strategy and then come back to us with it and we'll see what we can do to resource that. So him and 2 other co-chairs, along with like 40 or 50 other community leaders in Detroit, came together around this task force, and they sat down and said, okay, we're going to create a plan to remove all blight in Detroit in the next 5 years. How much blight is there? No one knew. Where is it? No one knew. Luckily at the table was a Skillman Foundation representative who said, you know, I bet Data Driven Detroit would know this. And they came to us, brought us to the table, and they said, okay, how much blight is there, Erica? We really need to know because we got to make this plan, and we have to do it in like 30 days. So I said, I don't know. I can tell you from 5 different data sources where it is, and I can tell you what it looked like in 2009, but now it's 2014, and I don't really have the answer. But I can go and get it for you. We've done it before. So I had forgotten to mention that in 2009, we did 350,000 data points collected on paper. That's part of why it took us so long. Also, it was the first time it had ever been done on that scale. So, yay, it's 2014. We have the technology. And working with a partner, Loveland Technologies, we actually designed and created this app, got about 150 Nexus 7 tablets. These little dots here are actually people out in the field collecting data real time. We were collecting something anywhere between 9,000 and 19,000 parcels of data per day with 150 resident surveyors, another 60 to 75 on any given day of Quicken staff who were coming in to help drive all those surveyors around. And a lot of those were Detroit residents as well. So we had 200 people coming in and out of our office every day, picking up their tablets and their assignments and getting on the road and going out and collecting these data on tablets. And then there would be this great Twitter-style feed that we could monitor the photo that was coming in along with the data. And we also had a team of about 30 to 40 quality controllers who were live quality controlling the data while they were collected. Here's a nice image of the app, right? Super easy. You walk up to a parcel, you tap on the parcel, it pulls up a sheet of information that we knew about it. Then you go in, you take a photo, and depending on whether your answer to the very first question was yes or no, which is there a structure here or not, it would ask you a series of questions about structures or a series of questions about vacant lots. You can do the next one. So really this project came to be known as Motor City Mapping, and we really see this as part of our values in action. Thank you. We had a lot of collaborative decision making in the process. Every day, those residents that we had hired would come back in from the field in sort of segmented, sort of casually set up chunks, right? Someone might come back in at 2. I forgot to mention, coldest, snowiest winter in Detroit's history. Snowpocalypse year? Yeah, that's when we were out in the field. And we were doing 380,000 parcels this time instead of 350. So, we would have folks rolling back in from the field, some of them because they were freezing, some of them just because they were done for the day or whatever. And so anywhere between 2 and 5 p.m. every day, a group of people would come back in, we would debrief, and we would learn from the field live, right? And we would change our process nearly every day, which was great. Little confusing on occasion, but we were able to improve the process on a daily basis from learning from all of our wonderful team of surveyors who were out there. And it's just another good photo. There we go. So at the end of that, we were able to create this map using GIS software back at the offices at Data Driven Detroit, or D3 as I like to call it. This is 40,000 parcels that are recommended for immediate blight intervention, another 40,000 parcels that, based on our literature review of tracking properties and how they enter into blighted status, we figured that over the course of 5 years, these were the parcels that were likely to become blighted over the course of intervention. And then over 6,000 vacant lots that had dumping on them or were not being maintained. And that's what we could see in snowpocalypse, right? So we're cautious around the blighted vacant lot piece, but it was still, we knew that interventions needed to take place there if we were going to eradicate blight in Detroit. We also at D3, while we were out in the field with all of our surveyors, managing 200 people out in the beautiful streets of Detroit every single day, we also had all of our lovely data wranglers at D3 working on taking in all of these other parcel level data, many of which we had never seen before at D3, even after working in the community for 6 years. The political will that was created around the Motor City Mapping Project was incredible, and there were so many people at the table, from DTE, from our water utility, from the governor's office, from the mayor's office. We were able to leverage out all of these different data sets and then tie them all together at the parcel level. So this was the biggest data set that's ever been assembled at the parcel level in Detroit ever. Then we actually took all of this information, right? Not everyone loves spreadsheets like we love spreadsheets. We've created this crazy relational database all tied to the parcel. But what do you do with that then? And right, we knew that we had the opportunity where this task force was working through a lot of questions around policy changes and financing and the exact interventions that should take place, right? It's not just demo, it's also rehab, it's also getting investors in the community to contribute to this as well. And we had, was it like $43 million at the time of repurposed, they were HARP funds. They became the hardest hit funds for certain communities across the country. Michigan was one of those, and Detroit got $43 million to use for demolition instead of for homeowner support, right? So we wanted to create a framework for helping them deploy those resources in the most strategic way possible, because $43 million of the estimated total $850 million is a spit in the bucket, but you gotta start somewhere. So we call it the Framework for Maximizing Community Impact, it's the MCI, we love our acronyms at D3, and we started with 2 goals: improving quality of life for the greatest number of people, and improving the investment climate to the greatest extent possible in certain areas. We also, we knew a lot of the literature, being urban planners and people who have done urban studies for a really long time, we knew that there was a sort of trajectory of neighborhood stability where if you intervene here, the amount of resources it takes to get you back on a stable path is much smaller than if you try to intervene here and get it back up here, right? So, using that information and lots of other smart people's thoughts, we created a 2-tier process. One is looking at neighborhood dynamics. Where might we improve quality of life for the greatest number of people, and run the data, all of the block groups in Detroit through that process. And then the neighborhood threat index, which really is about identifying tipping point neighborhoods from that first set of neighborhoods. So the next graphic should help us look at this. So we have a neighborhood dynamics score across the city for all the geographies. And then we take these areas of higher potential impact and we run those areas through this tipping point analysis to identify areas that are at the precipice of that tipping point, and those are your areas for prioritized interventions. We looked at lots of different indicators, as you might imagine. You saw that super long list of data that we had, plus all of the condition information, land use information, blighted vacant lot information, vacant open and dangerous, all of that, right? And we had to filter down how we were actually going to create these 2 indices. We did factor analysis to weed out collinear variables, and then came out with these 4 for the first index and these 2 indicators for the second index, which were really looking at trajectory, right? So foreclosures over time and the change from we had residential condition from 2009, yay, and we could make a comparison to 2014, and we could see which ones were either on the decline or on their way up or staying the same. So if you run it through the first one, these are the areas. You'll see, this community up here, it's actually where a lot of the population still resides in Detroit. So it kind of jived with where we were thinking would make sense if you're trying to improve quality of life for the greatest number of people. And I'll point out, especially here and here, these areas have really largely been depopulated. They still have a lot of blighted vacant buildings there, but they don't pop up because we're not trying to go and dump resources into an area where it's not going to impact anybody's life, right? So this made sense, and then we take the areas in blue and we run them through the second one, and this index then highlighted the areas for us where interventions would make more sense to start, right? The goal here is not to stop ever intervening in blight in Detroit, but again, you got to start somewhere, and we have limited resources available. So if we take that picture and we look at how many people did we actually capture in this, this is 193,000 people live in just these areas, and of a population of just over 700,000, that's a lot, right? We've also captured nearly 30% of the population under 18 in these areas, so more vulnerable populations that could potentially benefit longer and more impactfully as children, right, from intervention in these areas. So this can then, like I said, we can go ahead and create a strategy and we can start making investments, but if it's not having the desired outcomes, we can fix that, right? But we have to start somewhere. So this can be periodically retooled if needed. And also, as interventions are deployed across the city, we gotta run it again and figure out where are the next areas to go as the next pot of funds arrive. So these will continue to evolve. It's actually being used, which is crazy. It's not perfect, right? Demolitions are actually happening across the city, but you can see that the more targeted geographic interventions are taking place in these areas. Now there's other places where block clubs or community organizations have said, no, you really got to clear this one out, it's dangerous, or the cops, are telling people in the Land Bank Authority that this area really needs intervention. There was also a lot of actors in this space, right? So it's not just the city and the Detroit Land Bank Authority who are intervening in blight, but for the most part, these are actually happening in the HHF designated neighborhoods, which were largely based or refined on the tool that we created. It's also being used for other initiatives now, which is really interesting. So if you can actually there's, like I said, dozens of independent actors, hundreds of independent actors, all operating in the same space, you might actually see a greater impact. It's not just blight intervention in an area, it's also how can I invest in schools, how can I invest in commercial real estate, entrepreneurship support. If these programs can actually coordinate and lift together a whole area along with residents, we're going to be better off. So we do run an open data portal on our website. We also do, like I said, other online tools where we've sort of synthesized and pre-packaged data for people who aren't as comfortable with raw files. We were able to collect all of the data on 380,000 parcels in just 35 working days in the snowiest winter ever in Detroit. And March 27th is the day that the report came out from the task force. That day we were able to post all of the data, all 380,000 records, on our website, on our open data portal for anyone to download. We also posted the methodology and the data assembled for the framework for maximizing community impact so that others could sort of test and prod at that. And there was this sort of synthesized, packaged version that was created by Loveland Technologies as an online tool for people to interact with the data at different scales and look at sort of a dashboard equation so that you could see lots of different data and people could poke around in it in a way that was a little bit more visually appealing than tables. I mentioned our open data site. It's kind of categorized into these themes. We try to make it user-friendly. It's a little bit more of a higher tech audience, I'd say, or more data savvy folks who are there, but we even find our partners in nonprofit organizations are going here and interacting with the data or downloading it for themselves. We do data workshops at D3 as well, so we're trying to improve data literacy among everyone, anyone who wants to use it. So actually one of the continuing pieces that we do with Motor City Mapping, we had done a mini grant program to get people to go out and collect their own data because we left that app open and publicly available for anyone to use for free forever. So we were trying to get it in the hands of more people, and we've taught probably at this point a couple thousand people across the city how to use that app and how to contribute data as conditions change, right? We wanted to leave behind a system instead of just taking one measurement in time in 2009, one measurement in time in 2014, and then 5 years from now, someone will come back and ask us again how much blight is there, and we'll be like, oh, I don't know, but we can go out and collect it for you. Instead, we wanted to leave a system behind that would allow it to stay continuously updated. So we did a workshop for those folks as well, or mini workshops, I'd say. I wanted to mention this as an available asset in the community. This is an app called Local Data, and we hold a license for it to be used inside the city of Detroit right now. If I had any interest outside of the city of Detroit, I'm certainly willing to talk about that. It's a customizable survey platform that is so intuitive and easy to use. You can go out and collect the data, whatever it is that you want to see. You want to collect data on parcels? Great. You want to drop new pins? You want to go and stand by every single fire hydrant and see if it's working or if it's covered in snow? You can do that. Whatever the issue is, you can do it. And it's easy enough that we've been able to teach high school students how to use it as well. It teaches about survey design, right? So how do you ask the questions in the right way? Is it a yes, no? Is it a 4 different options? Is it a blank field? Is it something that you want to speak your voice into, take photos, etc.? And it all feeds back into a centralized repository where then you can immediately map it without knowing really anything about GIS software. You can see it on a screen, you can start filtering it, you can start manipulating the data through that platform. So it's a resource that I wanted to mention. The next one shows the mapping side, so you can, again, this is actually a community group. We set them up. They customized their own questions. They created the survey for themselves, went out in the field and did a windshield survey of all their parcels in their neighborhood, and then they can quickly go through and sort of filter or change the colors on there like a choropleth map to show them different characteristics. There are others like us, like D3. We're a network across the country called the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. There's one out in Grand Rapids, if you wanted to know, called the Community Research Institute. They are amazing. And that website will take you to the place where you can see all across the country where they are. And we all have the same general philosophy. We all do slightly different things, but we gather together a couple times a year to geek out on data and collectively problem solve. And it's a great network of folks who really want to help people responsibly use American Community Survey data and tell you about new technology for data collection or mapping or online tool use. And I just want to pull us back to the data-driven everything, right? We can do this, and we can do it in a way that's not scary and privacy violating, but we can do it in a way that's really driving our communities forward and making good, positive change. So, thank you for letting me blather at you for a few minutes there. I can take questions or just talk.
What high schools have you been working with to kind of gather data or work with the apps?
So for the most part, it was probably like 4 years ago that we were actually teaching some Detroit public school teachers in collaboration with Wayne State University how to go out and collect with Garmin sets, and it was so hard to figure that out, and the teachers were struggling so much. But then we were able to teach them the free GIS, the ArcMap or Arc Explorer software to interact with those data. Now it's really more informal at this point, and we're just trying to get out into different community organizations, and then the age ranges can be across the board. Yeah.
I had my students go on here, the social studies teacher at my school, and I'm at Cody High School, which would have been in that targeted area there, had told me about it. We went out and looked at one of the things that drove our students, or it drives them, with some of their decisions, which was average distance students are away from their school.
The student dispersion data.
Yeah, so that was in there, and they did look at that, and then they did some statistical studies based on whether or not they believed the data that was out there versus what currently existed.
Yeah.
It was really close, actually.
Oh, that's
the
great.
average distance was good, so.
Wow, cool. We're getting close to starting a project in Cody, actually, if you want to chat. I think it's actually centered right around the high school, so yeah, cool.
Do you all only work with the blight data? Do you collect data about other things, other projects?
So the project that we're about to do in Cody is actually collecting, it's more property oriented than anything else. We're also starting a project in Brightmoor in the next month, working with a partner doing a perception survey. So that's going to get a little bit interesting for us. And again, so we don't typically do people surveys at D3, but we're going to work with a partner and see how it goes. Yeah. What's that?
I might see you. I live near that neighborhood.
Oh, cool. All right.
I live over there, so I'm wondering which partner. Are you working with Brightmoor Renaissance?
So not with the school, actually. So Jane Morgan.
That's not a school, that's a community
Oh.
organization.
Oh gosh, so I know the Brightmoor Neighborhood Alliance. It's who I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so you noticed our roots in the Skillman Foundation, right? So the Neighborhood Alliance we've been working with for a long time, actually. Yeah, Kirk and Joe Rashid, who's not there anymore, I don't think. Yeah. Yeah, so our partner there, we'll be talking with the Neighborhood Alliance, but if there's another group that we can talk with to get sort of, a broader base, that would be great.
Well, Brightwater Renaissance is really looking into, a lot of the people are buying parcels of land in Brightwater trying to get into farming.
I've noticed.
Yeah, and so,
How is that going over in the neighborhood?
This seems to be going over pretty well. I mean, from, what I've talked with the neighbors and, of course, I was the one that was on YouTube when they dumped all of that stuff across the street from my house and it made the news and everything.
Yeah.
But, the farming is, there are several people that have farms and they have chickens and they have goats and.
Which isn't legal though, right?
Right.
It really isn't, but I did the farming myself, at Catherine Ferguson Academy. We had the first farm in Detroit, and I was the teacher that started that with Mr. Works. He started with the, plants and animals, and then I assisted him, so we were the ones that actually, I wrote the curriculum for that program. So, you can have animals, if you are using them for school use. Like he got that taken care of, but they told me that with the goats, being in their parcels, that they were working with something with the city that they thought they were right on the edge of getting this permission.
Because I think now they're allowed to basically keep them as long as the neighbors don't complain. And really, when you go there, you might not have neighbors, right?
Right.
There are
You
areas
really
there
don't.
where you look like you're out in the middle of the country.
Yeah, you really don't, because I raise chickens there. And in fact, one of them has my incubator right now. And, you really don't have a lot of neighbors. And the neighbors that you do have, for the most part, are either into what you're doing or into something else artsy. And so they
It seems to have taken a very artistic, honestly, like part of it feels a little bit hippie.
Yes,
like,
it
okay.
is.
Yeah. All right.
And people from all over the world. I mean, Dutch.
Yeah.
We have Dutch neighbors. We have neighbors from Russia. We have neighbors from, all over now.
But I think that, so I work with a church that's in that Brightmoor neighborhood where they took in a local neighborhood organization and they had the whole map up. They might have had some of your data up. And I had them kind of walk me through what they were looking at. And they did some perception data in the neighborhood and found that people did want to do local farming.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other people that looked at that and thought that was crazy, but that was based on the neighborhood's desire for where they wanted to
And they're
do
getting
that.
grant money, and I wouldn't get on the board because I wanted the benefits, like, they were like, you want to be on the board? No, because they're doing water catchment systems and all types of things that I want to, I have a lot of land and I want to,
That's great.
Yeah, I went out into the community last spring and was at a few people's houses. It felt very hippie-ish, but in general, they were looking at different community partnerships to share resources and to kind of share knowledge.
And it has changed pretty quickly, because I know, 20 years ago, when I, first moved over there, 25 years ago, it was more gangster. And now it's just sort of, the girl from Sharon, she's Dutch, when I did Devil's Night Patrol, some of us did Devil's Night Patrol, and there was not one fire. But she, after one of our late night meetings, she said, well, I guess I'll go home. And I said, well, would you like a ride? Because I was trying to, oh no, I'll just walk. And I was like, boy, we couldn't have said that. She was walking like 5 blocks. I just looked at her like this. Does she know where she is? She just took off and just walked. And when I saw her part of the neighborhood where she's living, it's like, she said, oh, I'm protected. And the neighbors, are all watching out for each other and everything like that. So it's just really amazing, to say the least.
That's such a positive story.
Yes, it is.
It's really great. My husband is a Detroit firefighter, and his engine house is at the sort of 96 Livernois, Chicago area. There's a church right there, right next to it. Okay. So he ended up fighting a lot of fires in Brightmoor and all the way stretching down to Southwest as well. And it's different now.
Oh, we didn't have one fire.
Well, they have removed a lot of the blight in that area too, which I think
they've been
it's a contributing factor,
It's huge.
Yeah.
we're still, around our school, we've had community partners come in and try and help us. And push to get some of the blighted houses. I think in the last year we were able to get 7 individual lots from it.
I work at McKinsey, and so just on the drive to work, it just all of a sudden you looked up, that isn't here anymore, that isn't here anymore, and that's on the main road. That's not even in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. More of our kids are walking to school now. Parents aren't feeling as frightened about letting them walk, and it's
Awesome.
Yeah, but then it gets into the whole, so you'll be turning the corner at some point, and that's the thing where we were able to we're working through Eastern Michigan University through a SEMIS project, and then had some grant money through an organization called Link Learning to try and figure out just exactly what you guys are doing, only at a school level. What community partners exist in our neighborhood at the school, and then what need exists, and how can students be engaged in collecting data, and then helping solve problems within their local neighborhood.
Awesome.
So there's,
We should talk.
Yeah.
That's great. Cool. I don't know where we. Oh, we have tons of time. We can just hang out and talk about Detroit, or.